Throughout history, apples have changed the world. Newton's apple led to the discovery of gravity. William Tell shot an apple off a guy's head for some reason. But now, the geniuses at Fireball are using apples to launch their delicious cinnamon whiskey into a new era. Introducing new Fireball Blazin' Apple. Taste history in the making with Fireball's new flavor, Blazin' Apple.
Please drink responsibly. Whiskey with natural cinnamon flavor, 33% alcohol by volume, produced by Sazerac, Louisville, Kentucky.
I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. Welcome back to the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. I'm your host, Alice, and I'm joined, as always, by my detecting co-host, Brett.
I'm a regular Sherlock Holmes, Alice.
Brett, while I am glad you think you're the Sherlock Holmes, thank goodness we as prosecutors don't have to be the Sherlock Holmes. And in fact, today we have an incredible honor of getting to have the Detectives podcast here on our show today. Hi, you guys. This is Dave and Steve. They are two seasoned but also active investigators with a combined 35 years of experience. And a lot like us, they entered into this space because they are able to explain the criminal justice system in a way that boots on the ground can do. Thank you, Dave and Steve, for being here with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be here, so thank you.
And guys, before we get started, I think we got to clear the air. We got to address the elephant in the room. The name, The Detectives. It's very familiar to me. I don't know. I'm getting similar vibes to another podcast. I can't put my finger on it.
It is close, maybe a word or something different, but no, it's funny about that is we had a lot of names that we were trying to go through, and we had a list, and we started checking them online and seeing if they were taken, and all of the ones that were like, oh, okay, we like that one, we like this one. But at the end of it, we were like, well, what are we? And what are we here to talk about? We're just the detectives with a podcast. And then when we thought, well, one of our favorites that we actually liked listening to was the prosecutors, it was almost a thought that we had of, well, we love their take on things. Now we also want to have our take and our seat at the table on this side of things.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So
I love it.
We truly love it. And also we like to know exactly what we're listening to. And I had no question.
Yeah.
Now, we were just at CrimeCon, and you guys were at CrimeCon for the first year. We were so glad that we made this connection, which is how you're on the show today. So you guys are kind of new to the game, but you've made a huge splash. So can you give us a little bit of background of who you are and why you decided to start this podcast other than to just hang out with us?
Yeah, I mean, who we are a couple of active investigators. The reason that we started this podcast was that we were seeing that there was a lot of conversation going on in the true crime, arena, a lot of misinformation getting put out there. We're kind of in a day and age where there's kind of a crossroads, between law enforcement and the communities. We saw this as an opportunity for us to get out there and start changing some of the narrative, start getting some of the correct information out to people and try to, foster a better relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Steve and I, and being still two active detectives at a larger agency, we have had the opportunity to work the gamut of criminal investigations, from homicides to child molest, rapes, fraud, officer-involved shootings, excessive use of force. We've worked it all. And working major investigations, we've started to really dive into the true crime community, and it started to kind of have some overlap with our line of work. And then you kind of start to see that the true crime community was being shaped by necessarily people that weren't involved or weren't active in the criminal justice system. And we thought, well, these are conversations that we've had for years, and why don't we take a seat at the table, give our perspective on things, and be a part of this conversation?
We should figure out if we could do a case together. That'd be fun.
Oh, I think it'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The detectives and the prosecutors. It's like real life.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's literally.
That's honestly what we talked about, because there is two completely different perspectives to this. When we're working these cases and going through everything and then present it to the prosecutor or the prosecutors, there's a lot of interesting conversations there that I think people would be interested in hearing.
We could have a joint podcast and we call it Law and Order. What do you think?
Man,
I've never heard of it before.
Yeah.
It's the stroke of genius.
Yeah, I haven't
The
checked
police to investigate the crimes.
We might need to get
And
a
the
couple lawyers
prosecutors.
to make sure we don't get sued for trademark infringement.
I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah.
I think you're good.
I think we just go with it.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
If the
Don't even
detectives
look.
say we're good, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
a couple things, this are the kind of things I notice because I'm not a very deep person. But number one, I was listening to your podcast and y'all's production quality is great. Like,
Thank you.
That's all Dave.
it took
Can I
forever for our sound to
Can I say one more thing also? You guys have such good voices. For
That was my
podcasting.
second point.
I am
Yeah.
so I'm sorry. We're a little we're fanning here because we have, technical issues all the time and people hate our voices. So I just have to say y'all's voices are phenomenal.
Really?
Steve, you got a good voice. Dave, you could be announcing like the top 50 on
Yeah.
the radio or something, man. I mean, it's
He was
like
just calling.
Well, I am flattered and honored. So thank you so much. It was a big change for us diving into this podcast realm of, we're obviously talking about what we do on a daily basis and what we've done for 35 years. But the technical aspect, the editing, the producing is something that we've never done before. And we were very, very gracious to have a lot of help from other creators. The Murder Sheet, some friends of ours, Kevin and Anya, they are just incredible people. And they helped us kind of get into the technical aspect of things. And it was just a lot of trial and error and see what we liked and what we didn't like and what sounded good and what didn't sound good. And we just went from there. But it was a challenge. It definitely was not easy.
And you guys are relatively new. Like, you started this year. So can you walk us through whose idea, whose harebrained idea was it to, record what you do and put it out there? And kind of what sort of red tape or administrative hoops did you have to jump through to clear with, your agency or your bosses that you were going to be doing this on, a regular basis?
What was it, about 2 years ago? A little over 2 years ago.
I'd say about 2 years, yeah.
Dave came to my house and we had a cigar out on the back porch and we were just talking. I mean, we were just throwing things out there. We don't like how things are going. We don't like the atmosphere. The climate right now was so anti law enforcement. And we were just kind of desperately looking for a way. We felt like there was something we could do because that's what we do. We see a problem, we want to fix it. And so we kind of started looking at really a lot of different options. Podcasting was not one of them, just, full disclosure.
Right.
But as over the course of a couple of years, as we really talked through some things and we put some stuff together, it actually started becoming more of a front runner.
Right.
And then I think late last year, we just decided just to throw some stuff in there, see what happens, to sit down, start getting the dialogue down, to start talking to each other. So we kind of kept pushing off the launch date a little bit because we wanted to get everything just right. We were trying to get all the little bells and whistles and all that. But yeah, it really just kind of was born out of kind of a need for us to do something.
Definitely, we wanted that finished, polished product that we can be proud of and really make the impact that we were looking for with the education and the awareness and having that open conversation with people about the good things in law enforcement and the bad things, because it has to be both. We like to pride ourselves that when you listen to the Detectives podcast, it's not going to be propaganda. We're going to have the honest conversations. And that was a part where we had to, when talking about our agency and why we don't mention what agency we work for, that's intentional. And the reason why we do that is they're okay with us, obviously, doing this, which is great. And we definitely appreciate that. But we don't want anything that we say to reflect on our agency. And at the same time, we don't want to muzzle. We don't want to just have to say all the good things. We want to be able to say and have the tough conversations that we do have. So it was an interesting, kind of tightrope to walk and how we were going to do this without making sure that we don't represent our agency but also be able to say and have these conversations that we want.
We're still walking that tightrope. I think every time we put a podcast out, we wonder if we're going to have jobs next week.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we were talking about this on our CrimeCon episode. We did Vinny Politan's show.
Oh, yeah.
Politan? I always forget what this guy
I think it's Politan, but sounds like it should be Politano.
Politano sounds better, but
You can ask
his name.
his number one fan, probably.
Oh.
He walked in and I've been watching him since way back when, the early days of Court TV. And I was pretty mad at him because during the Casey Anthony trial, during verdict watch, you were supposed to be able to write in. I wrote in. He never responded. Didn't read it. I mean, it was a great comment too.
Yeah, and he called him out right there.
I did. I told him, you never got back with me. So he apologized. We made amends.
And we're
moving forward.
Yeah.
We were recording a live episode, and when we started, he introduced me with my full name, where I worked, and what my title was. And I was like, oh, man, I'm totally getting fired now.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, we understand. I mean, we walked that same tightrope when we got started. I mean, there's a reason we're Brett and Alice. Because, like you, we tried to avoid in any way crossing that line because I'm sure everyone at your agency, like at our office, was like, why in the world would you want to do that? Like, I'm sure you got a lot of incredulous looks, right? Where people are like, are you sure you want to do this?
Well, and it was interesting because we did have that reaction at first, and then we thought that they wouldn't really want to check it out. And then now everyone comes up to us and they're like, oh my God.
We actually have a couple good fans that we never really thought we would have gotten.
Yeah, it means a lot. We really appreciate that. And the support that we've actually gotten back from our fellow officers that we work with has been amazing. And we can't thank them enough.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Well, so you said that, you felt a real drive to make sure that we see it as a civic duty, what we do in our podcast. And I get the same vibe from you guys that there's this information that makes us all better citizens, right? We're the ones who engage with the justice system as witnesses or as jurors. And those are really important things. Take it a step back to when you guys get involved. If witnesses or people in the society aren't willing to trust law enforcement, crimes and investigations will go nowhere. And so when you had that drive to bring, the real story, real insights about what's happening to, the podcast sphere, was there a case or were there types of cases, like a series of cases, whether it be murders or any other sorts of cases that really hit home for you guys? And are you staying with those types of cases or are you, broadening out what you plan to cover?
I think when we looked at the true crime genre, we were kind of, a little overwhelmed it seemed to be very murder heavy. And I understand why. I mean, those are amazing cases to follow. Those are very interesting. So we wanted to try to kind of, I think, shine some light on some other major case topics. One of the things that we're doing is a series on child sexual abuse material, for instance, CSAM. And some of the things that have been going on with that, we don't feel like that gets enough attention, especially from the media. Those are hard conversations to have. And those were hard conversations for us to have, both of us having worked in that field as much as we have and done the things that we've done and seen the things that we've seen. But because we have been in those trenches for so long, it really gives us more of a drive to bring that forward and try to get as much light on that. We have a saying in police work, you want to bring as many guns to the fight as you can. So, we want to try to get more guns in this fight and see if we can do something.
I was listening to your episode on Bibb County, and I live in Alabama, and knew that was a really bad case. But until I listened to your episode, I had no idea just how awful it was.
He had actually, Steve had brought it up to me and he said, did you hear about this case out of Bibb County? And I thought, no. And when he started describing it to me, I'm like, how have I not heard of this? Why is this not plastered on every news station everywhere? I mean, it's horrific. And that was the conversation that we had of, we want to have this balance also on our podcast of we don't want to sensationalize these types of things. We don't want to, glorify these murders or these horrific things, but you do want to educate and you do want to make people aware. And so when you're talking about following these cases and things that we've seen, that was one from the podcast realm. And then when we work cases and the public reaches out with information, there's really no dialogue there. There is an army of people in the true crime community that are willing to help law enforcement, but they don't know what we need. And we do a really bad job of telling them what we need. So it's this two-way street that really we want to clarify and maybe provide some awareness, listen and hear feedback of what this community can do. And I think it's only going to benefit everyone in the system. If we can work together, we can continue and have the outcomes for these cases that we want.
We want to make the community a force multiplier in what we do, rather than bogging the system down because they're not sure how to help and they're just doing what they can. You have somebody that calls in a complaint on the house next door because the back porch light is on at 3 a.m. and they think, well, that's criminal activity. Obviously there's criminal, the guy just works third shift and he's letting his dog out, versus somebody that's walking around their neighborhood, sees a car that doesn't belong, jots down a license plate number, and then all of a sudden you've got the one key that you needed to solve a big crime. We want to try to distinguish those kind of what they can do, what they need to do, what we need from them, and why we need it the way that we need it, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. And I do have a question about this because we have so many of these cases, especially the ones we cover that are unsolved. We always give a tip line if there is one. I know it's a double-edged sword. When you have a tip line for a very highly publicized case, like you said, you can get bogged down in countless of completely irrelevant, unhelpful tips. But we also always hear, call in a tip no matter how small you think it is, because you may have the missing piece of the puzzle and you may think it's insignificant, but to law enforcement, it may be the link that they need. So can you talk to us a little bit in that framework, how to use a tip line as the layperson to benefit you guys? Or is it truly just let you guys help filter out the tens of thousands of calls that may come in?
We actually are going to have a future episode coming up on this that we're really excited to talk about, because you do have, with law enforcement, you have this cone of silence. We have this habit of just not saying anything. And there is good reason for that on most occasions. It is to protect the integrity of these investigations. We don't want information to come out that say only a killer would know. Only them and the victim were at this scene and one walked away. They are the only ones that know, other than when law enforcement's investigating it. So we do have to have some sort of information that we keep close to the vest and that we don't share. But that doesn't mean we don't share anything, right? And I think law enforcement just has to do a little bit better of a job of giving the public more information. And like you said, kind of directing and guiding, because they don't know what's important and they're just trying to help. It's not that they're intentionally trying to bog down the case or the investigation, but they just don't know. So it's a balance that I think it's case specific. You just have to know what you're, reach out to the public and say, this is what we're looking for, and just try to work with them the best that you can to get that information that you're looking for without tanking your case.
And I think it's an awareness too. Communities have gotten away from knowing their own communities. You see something unusual, you're going to recognize it's unusual in your neighborhood before anybody else will. Taking note of that kind of stuff, getting details of things, cars, license plates, clothing, whatever. Those kind of things are becoming really handy. I mean, after the fact, when a crime's been committed in the neighborhood and then people are like, oh, well, we did see a white van. That's not nearly as helpful as a white van with an Arizona license plate, blah, blah, blah. So, those kind of things, just knowing what details to get, I think, are the other thing. And then also not getting online and just spreading the rumor mill is the worst thing.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, there are things that can get out that can really hinder an investigation. If there's false, there's a false narrative about somebody being arrested that hasn't been found yet or something like that, that can really cause us problems because people stop looking. And then we lose that force multiplier of everyone, looking for this guy and he has nowhere to hide.
I love that you guys have episodes on like parts of an investigation. Like you have an episode on report writing, which I love that. I mean, do you see the podcast as not only educating the public, but also reinforcing sort of good practices for police officers who might be listening?
Oh, yeah. I think that was part of our ethos when we started, because we knew it wasn't going to be just true crime fans. We knew a lot of people within law enforcement would likely, gravitate toward it, and they have. I was at another detail over the weekend where an officer that I had worked with for a long time, I didn't even know he knew about it, and came up and talked about how great the podcast was. And he was somebody that was interested in becoming a detective later on in his career. And he was talking about how helpful some of those things were. So yeah, I think that's part of it. That was a hard one, because when we first started kind of digging into that episode, it started out as kind of an academy lesson on how to write a police report. Right. We're like, this isn't what we need to be putting out there. This isn't. So we tried to kind of redirect and went more with, why is it important and what makes a good report? So those kind of things we are trying to, if we can influence, especially younger officers that are getting into the game that want to become detectives, we would love to be able to have that on there as well.
Yeah, that episode in particular was one that we thought, man, this is gonna kill our podcast. Yeah, this is gonna literally, it's our first couple episodes gonna ruin it. And it has been one of our fan favorite episodes of all time, and everyone talks about it. And we found that so interesting, and it really did hit home to, yes, we are playing on the law enforcement community that is listening to the podcast, but also trying to pull back that veil on law enforcement to the general public, because that's something you don't see. And that was why our first episode was Hollywood versus reality. The perception of law enforcement for a majority of the people out there is what they see on TV or movies. That's what they expect. They expect a criminal investigation or a homicide investigation to wrap up in under an hour. And it just doesn't happen.
And all
with fingerprints and DNA and direct evidence.
Everything with a nice bow on top. And it does set a very unrealistic expectation for detectives and law enforcement. So that's why we kind of wanted to get ahead of that. That was our first one. And then start to develop episodes on things that are not talked about. The grind of writing a report and how important it is to document what you're doing. And then when you provide it to the prosecutors, they base, whether they're going to file charges or not on your case report. And that's why it's so important. And it's just not talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly powerful. If you guys have ever heard us talk about it, we're also surprised that our nerdiest law episodes are people's favorite. People want to literally understand the rules of evidence.
That's awesome.
404, 403B, those sorts of things. And I think what you said is so important, because, and I want to just encourage you, because yes, good report writing and, what's in a report, maybe for the layperson as well, they recognize it's not a word for word transcript, because whenever you have these police conspiracies where the police covered up or they didn't do a good job, there's these allegations like, why don't they have body cam? Why don't they have a word for word transcription of every single conversation they've ever had with anyone in anything in an investigation? And the reality is, you have one view of a case.
Yeah.
You document as well as you can every single thing you have, but everything you spend time on, it's taking time away from something else. And so there's a balance in everything you do, including report writing. And so a report is not meant to be a tape recorder.
Right.
And nor would it actually benefit the prosecutor if it were, because they need your impressions. There are things that are not actually spoken that we get in our police reports all the time, right? I rolled up and these are the things I observed. The street was silent despite it being a very busy time of day. Everyone immediately closed their doors and pulled their shutters, as soon as we rolled up. Something was amiss. That is not something that is conveyed verbally, but something that is so important when you have, combined 35 years of investigating experience and you roll these streets all the time. Things that you're able to convey and testify to on the stand. And that's way more powerful, actually, I would argue, than if you had a transcribed conversation. So I'm only, saying thank you for doing that sort of public service. And I think it has a reach far beyond even maybe what you intend.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, that means a lot. And it is a balance, because you have some reports that, you don't want to be that word for word. And then I'm sure you guys have seen some that say, please see attached video.
And
it's a 6-hour video that you then on your side of things where you're like, well, you're taking 6 hours of your time when you could be dedicating it to something else. So it really is, all the players in the criminal justice system really have to work together to to make this happen? Because
I always explain it to the newer detectives when I would do some training. If you walk out of that interview room and the prosecutor's on the phone, he's going to have two questions, or she is going to have two questions. Number one, what did he say? They don't want a rundown of everything. Just, if I have a conversation here with Dave and then I'm talking to you guys later, I'm just going to tell you, yeah, Dave and I talked about, the weather. We talked about, the work a little bit, and this is what we said. So when I walk out of that room, I'm not telling you verbatim everything that was said. I'm just giving you a gist of the story, number one. And number two, was he being honest? That's the other thing. And then you have to be able to articulate and back that up in the report as to why you think he was or was not being honest when he gave you the story.
Let me ask you this. This is a little different. So we have the benefit of being lawyers, right? So we can have a podcast episode where I say, bite mark evidence is a complete waste of time. You can't trust it at all. It's junk science. It's the worst thing in the world. And then the next day, turn around, try a case, tell a jury, bite mark evidence. You heard the expert. The teeth match. If the teeth match, you must convict. Right? Like I can do that. And no one can question me because I'm not a witness. I'm just an attorney. You guys, on the other hand, are witnesses. So if you, in one of your episodes, if you say something, like if you say, for instance, in a report, you should always include the time of day, which you would do that. But let me just say you did that. And then you write a report and you forget to put the time of day. Is there some concern that the defense attorney is going to be like, now, isn't it true that you have a podcast? In that podcast, you said a good detective always puts the time of day. Where's the time of day on this report, sir?
Yeah, I would that's why I would point out we do have a disclaimer that I encourage everyone to listen to before the podcast starts. No, it's always a concern. Obviously, when you get on the stand and start getting questioned by a defense attorney, you just have no idea what they're going to bring up. But if you have a case that's solid and you know your case forward and backward, the questions like that don't matter. It really doesn't, because the jury's going to see through it. The judge is going to see through it. And when you're looking at the meat and potatoes of your case and what you have and the work you put into it, those mistakes happen all the time. The typos or grammar errors, things like that. It happens all the time. And if that, to me, I feel if a defense attorney is zoned in that I didn't put the date and time on there, he or she has bigger problems. And I'm happy, because that's what they're focused on. They're not worried about did their client do it or not. They're focused on this. I'm totally good with that. If we want to go down that way, let's do it.
Yeah.
You bring up a great point, though. I think a lot of people don't see that aspect of being investigators. There's the actual police investigating, detecting, shall we say, of your job that's very much behind the scenes. It is the cross-section of so many disciplines. You have to be psychologists, you have to be sociologists, you have to be all these sorts of things to be able to get people to talk to you, but you also have to foresee which leads you need to follow. Then in a completely different bucket, to be a good investigator, you have to be an effective storyteller on the stand. You have to be good at testifying. Those are two completely different skills. Can you talk a little bit about if there's one that you like more than the other and how you are able to kind of prepare for both aspects of your job? And in some ways, I think your job is harder than ours because we're just lawyer. We have one lane. You actually have multiple lanes you have to be in.
There's been plenty of times sitting on the stand where I'm looking at the prosecutor like, help. you can,
and a good prosecutor will help you.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime. Yeah, definitely the interviews and interrogations part. It's one of my favorites. It's just the chess match. It's the talking to people. It's sitting down in a room and getting somebody to tell you, something that really could affect their entire life, the rest of their life. If they tell you what you are asking, they are going away potentially for the rest of their life. How do you do that? We talk about it, that it truly is an art form, interviewing and interrogating people. And so that's probably my favorite aspect of it. I love the chess match between it, but it does help you also then when you're sitting on the stand. It's almost the same kind of game. You're just trying to stick to the facts. I always tell newer officers or detectives, be respectful. They're going to come after you and they're going to, again, attack the date and time, and they're going to attack all these things. I've had defense attorneys say that I'm doing God knows what with their client. And again, if that's what they're going with, then that's a great thing. Just maintain your composure and get through it, because at the end of the day, it's your case that is, what matters, not just that.
I think the courtroom was actually, for me, more difficult to learn than the police work and the investigation or even the suspect interview. But I was fortunate enough, and early on in my career, the very first time I testified, the defense attorney was actually a local guy that I knew. And I just swung by his office one day after the trial was over and said, "Hey, if you have a minute, can we sit down?" And I said, "How did I do?" And so he kind of started walking me through, some of the tactics that he was trying to use and the good things that I did to kind of fend that off. And then the bad things where I fell into the traps. And for me, that was, I just started doing that early on in my career a few times. And I was really surprised at how many of the defense attorneys would actually sit down with me and be honest about what they were trying to do. And the more I was able to learn that and kind of understand, the game within the game that goes on in the courtroom between the prosecutor and the defense attorney and what they're trying to bring out, different ways that they're doing that. Once I started kind of getting that feel down, things really started coming around a little easier and I didn't stress nearly. I mean, before that I was, throwing up in the men's room before I had to go on the stand. And after that, I felt pretty good. I went up against some pretty tough defense attorneys though, that kind of, after you get your ass handed to you a couple of times, you start to learn that.
Well, and I would say, and I don't want to say that all the time, a majority of the time it's not personal. Just like the defense attorney that I was referring back to when he was insinuating all of these things and trying to tear me down on the stand. And I just kept with the same composure and just went through it. After court, he walked up to me and said, "Man, you did a hell of a job," and shook my hand and walked away. And that was very early on in my career. And I didn't know how to take that at the time. It was very confusing. But like Steve said, once you start doing it, once you start realizing it's not personal, it gets a little bit easier. And it's an interesting dynamic to experience, that's for sure. But it makes you so much better at your job at the same time, because when they're asking you these questions or they're going after you on certain things, then in the follow-up investigations that you have, you're documenting better or you're asking certain questions and you're just better improving yourself and your skill set by being questioned on the stand.
I'm going to ask you a totally unfair question. You said that you've sat down with defense attorneys, you work with attorneys all the time, you get beat up by them in the courtroom. What is your opinion of lawyers in general, defense and prosecutors? We won't hold you to it.
So much. No, no. I think once you realize that it is a job, that would be like us expecting somebody saying, "Oh, well, they're detectives. We don't like them." Because of the work that they do. I would never say I truly have a lot of respect for all attorneys, prosecutors, and defense attorneys alike, because it is a different animal. Just like our job is completely different. I have a lot of respect for what you guys do, because I don't think I could do it. And so much respect. And I've learned a lot over the years in my career from a lot of good prosecutors and defense attorneys.
I think the turning point for me was when one of the defense attorneys that I went up against when I was working in uniform, I think it was an OWI trial or something like that. And he just, tore me up one side and down. I couldn't stand that guy after that. And then he became a chief deputy prosecutor. And I thought, oh no, this is not, he tore my report up. He told me I was doing a horrible job, and then go into the office and he just was praising me and talking about how great of a job I did and how great my report. And I'm like, what are you kidding me? Do you not remember last year? And,
because I do.
I do. I still remember that. I still have scars. So I agree with Dave. I think once you get in the mindset that we all have a job to do, we all function in this system, and there's a reason that we're doing what we're doing. And any defense attorney that comes at me and stays in the parameters of the case and my job, I'm okay with. I have no problem with that. When they start going out of bounds, that's very rare, a very rare instance. That's not all attorneys. So I have great respect for attorneys. So I've actually, that's part of the job that I've enjoyed, was getting to know that courtroom aspect. It's a fun
Checks
place
in
to
the
be.
mail, guys.
Yeah.
That was a 100% unfair question. You gave much too good answers for that.
That was a softball. That was a softball, Alice. You got to pitch a little harder than that.
So on the podcast, you guys, I know you started off with a lot of the procedural stuff. Like you said, the Hollywood versus reality. You've done some report writing, other aspects of the investigation in the Bibb County case. You mentioned that like you guys were going to hold off doing cases, but sort of that one grabbed you and you wanted to do it. On the case front, do you imagine you're sort of, because you're just getting started. We got you at the very beginning, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you imagine, are you going to do active cases, ongoing cases? Are you going to do more solved cases or cold cases? What's your sort of idea for how the podcast moving forward is going to go as far as case specific episodes?
So we avoid, obviously, anything that involves us or in our area. So we're avoiding that. But the Bibb County case, like you said, we honestly didn't expect to start covering cases this early because we have so much. I mean, we still have a list of episodes and groundwork that we want to cover that we don't think is out there yet. But that one in particular was one that we just had to. It hit home. Like Steve said, it was these cases are the toughest that we work. It also kind of falls in line with our series that we're doing right now, The War That We Owe Them, which is the fight against CSAM. And it's something that doesn't get enough attention, but it's happening way more. I mean, there are millions of CSAM tips reported to NCMEC yearly, and there are thousands of murders. Again, not trying to take anything away from when someone loses their life. It's horrific, but these kids being victimized sometimes for their entire lives, which also can lead to a homicide as well. It needs to be talked about. We need to normalize this conversation and get in front of it. So that's why we started with that case.
Yeah, we've talked about it. And the biggest thing is we want to feel like we're contributing to it. We don't want to just cover cases to cover cases. We don't want to just cover it because it's sensationalized and people want to hear about it. If we feel like we have an angle, and I hear things all the time, and I'll call him usually, regardless of what time it is, because I have an idea and Dave needs to hear it. So I call Dave.
He does do that a lot. Yeah.
But I was listening to your guys's, I think it was last week's, the Suzanne, and you guys were talking about the infotainment center download from the car. And it was one of those things that I called Dave and I'm like, oh man, we're not experts in that, but we know, we know a thing or two about it.
We've done that a lot. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was something that we could have added. That's the value that we could bring to it. I think that's more of where we would want to stay in line.
While we have you on that.
Yeah.
Is it possible to turn off the telematics on your vehicle so it doesn't track you? Is that something?
So I did make a couple of phone calls knowing that I was going to talk to you guys. That was a setup. But so it is possible. It's not very likely. So there's different things. And then also it depends on how they took the download out of the, infotainment center. If they just plugged into it and downloaded some information, you're going to get different things than if you.
So it might have been the download.
It could be.
Maybe they just, okay.
So there's a lot of things that play into it. And then also make and model, almost all Ford products you can get really good information from, but you go overseas to BMW or Mercedes or VW, something like that, you're not going to get nearly as much information. So.
Interesting.
That is really interesting. Thank you.
So that,
like Alexis,
and what we did was just cause more questions than answers.
Right.
And that's kind of
but that's great.
It's
very interesting.
But that's actually, there's so many places where it can fall. And thank you, by the way. Unlike Brett, you guys were very tactful and didn't tell people how to turn off the telematics and therefore evade law enforcement. Because Brett over here would have taught everyone how to do it. So I appreciate you. And I don't think you should tell Brett because he doesn't have a filter.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. No, and that's okay though. But that is something that we can provide, and that's the take that we want, because someone in the public may think, well, now that case is sunk. Well, not necessarily. We're going to look at cell phones. We're going to look at other means, because this isn't something on that particular topic that really anyone should know off the top of their head, right? They're just not going to know how to do it. It's not common knowledge. So as an investigators, that doesn't mean we stop there. It doesn't mean that just because we have one vehicle that doesn't have a good infotainment recording, that we're not going to still look at it. And so each case is different. Each piece of evidence is different. And it just because you may be missing one doesn't mean that you pick up something else that can be just as equally important.
I think as an investigator, I started going through, okay, how far back could they have gone? Because if you go back 60, 90 days and there was never an event like that, and then at this one moment in time, there's an event. It's kind of what I learned from the prosecutors that I've worked with. The absence of evidence sometimes is your best evidence. So, just different things like that you look at.
Yeah. And we still see that in cell phone forensic dumps all the time, where people will either just delete very, very specific,
Very specific things,
dates
yeah.
and times. And you're like, well, that's
Very
interesting.
helpful.
You've never done that before.
Or they turn off their phone for the first time.
Yes.
Just so happens to be when a murder's
The 1
going on.
hour,
Yeah.
the 1 hour
Yeah.
that the murder's happening.
Yeah. You know how those pesky firmware updates.
Yeah.
There you go. So, and we won't keep you here all night, nor make you reveal all of your investigative tactics. But I am curious, especially because you've been active investigators for decades. There's always going to be advancements in technology for investigations. Genetic genealogy is a huge buzzword now. Telematics for your cars, cell phone dumps and cell phone pings have come so far from when they first came on the scene a couple decades ago. With all these different kind of advancements, how do you get up to speed? And do you see one of these investigative techniques being the way of, the future of investigation?
I want to be clear, though. Steve has decades of investigative experience. I know that I may have more gray hair than Steve has, but I have been a detective since 2019. So just wanted to.
Dave likes to throw those punches.
Yeah,
anytime
they
he
think
can
I'm
get
the
them in
older
there.
one. Everyone is
Everyone
like,
thinks it.
yeah, everyone thinks
I love
that,
it.
and I'm like,
Oh, wow.
okay,
I
thanks.
use a really good moisturizer.
There you go, Steve.
Love the honesty.
One skin.
Yeah, but no,
Yeah.
you are right, and I think that does give us a little bit of an edge being active detectives, is that we do stay up to date with all of this advancement in technology, and we are, I would say, a little bit more up to speed than maybe someone that's been out of the game for a while. It is difficult though, because law enforcement in general is very reactive. We are always trying to catch up to the bad guys. We're always trying to catch up with technology, and that's department dependent as well. I mean, some departments have a lot more money and resources that they can put into technology or what they're doing, and others don't have that. And I think that's for us working for a larger agency with more resources. We are able to go into and assist those smaller agencies or take over cases because they just don't have those resources, but we do. And the training that we go to is always beneficial. But it seems like every time that you get something down, something just comes in and completely changes the way that you're doing things. But I would say the way that we are going is a positive direction. Law enforcement is, I feel, catching up in a lot of different ways, which is nice.
I think we're doing a better job in law enforcement of recruiting people from different sectors. So the tech sector, those kind of areas where they're looking at things and saying, how can we use that for a law enforcement purpose? Because cell phone downloads didn't come about because law enforcement needed to see in the cell phone. We just knew that it exists. So we went and grabbed the infotainment centers for cars. Before the infotainment centers, it was the black boxes that were in the cars, the data recorders for crashes and things like that. So those are just things that are out there that these companies are installing or doing that we just kind of latch onto. And it's like, hey, we can use that information. So I think it's the creativity within law enforcement that kind of helps guide that. And I think that's the one thing that we got to keep on top of.
So before we ask you all the places people can find you, I always like to ask sort of a general question. I'll throw it out to you now. If there was one thing you could say to people about the jobs you do, about being a detective, about being a police officer, being in law enforcement, if there was one message you could send to people, what would it be?
I think the biggest message I would say is that we are at a crossroads. Law enforcement is at a crossroads, but also the public is as well with law enforcement. And I think if both of us decide to choose the right path and work together, like I said earlier, there's nothing that we can't do. We can get that trust back to where the public can come to us and say, hey, we need help with this. At the end of the day, we're servants. That's what we are. And we're here to do the cliche of protect and serve, right? And I think if we can build that relationship back and really have these open and honest conversations with each other, it's going to be a game changer for both of us, for both sides, for law enforcement and the public. And both sides are going to benefit from it for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is just building that bridge. And I think we just need to keep building bridges and, make sure that the more that the community understands what we do as detectives, I think the more they can support and get behind.
And truly, thank you for serving the public. The work you all do, we get a special view into it because of our jobs, but truly it is a calling. It's not just a job. I know it's not something that you can clock out of and stop thinking about. You do it because you care. So thank you for your public service, and thank you for bringing that public service to the airwaves. I think your podcast is absolutely something that was needed, and I look forward to many more years to come and as you guys further develop. So You guys have heard just a snippet of their amazing voices and their amazing podcast, the Detectives Podcast. Can you guys tell us where people can find your podcast website? People are already asking about your fan pages online, so please enlighten us.
Oh, well, again, thank you so much for having us. We really enjoyed connecting with you guys at CrimeCon and talking to you. We can talk for probably another 3 hours. We really enjoyed talking with you all and collaborating with this, but they can definitely reach us on social media at the Detectives PC. And we love to hear from our fans. We've had tons of emails about different episodes or different ideas that people want to know about. And we love that. So they can reach us at the detectivespodcast@gmail.com. So if you have something you want to hear or a topic that you want us to cover or cases that you want us to cover and look at, they can reach out to us on there. And we do have a Patreon as well, the Detectives Podcast, and we are launching a new series called Cross-Examined on there as well. Speaking of being in the hot seat, we are giving our first on-scene members on Patreon the ability to cross-examine the detectives.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Wow.
I love
I
it.
like
That's
it.
yeah,
Very
well, we're going to
creative.
see if we love it.
Yeah.
They have
Maybe a
actual
one
benefits.
episode.
Yeah, so
For
they're going to be
being
able
They have actual benefits.
yeah,
We
they-
joke
they-
because we are terrible. We tell our patrons not to be patrons because we give them nothing.
It's okay. It means a lot. It really does. The support that we've gotten from everyone listening, and not only from our fellow officers, but the listeners that we do have, we can't thank them enough because the support they've given is just incredible. And we wanted to do something to give back that way where they can appear on the podcast. They're going to ask us the questions they want to ask. And then we're going to throw it up on our Patreon account and go from there.
Yeah, the interaction that we've had with the listeners has been the most fun for us, and that's something that we definitely want to foster, keep it moving forward. So
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have you on all the time. So
right.
Well, please do.
Well,
And we'd love to have you guys on as well. Again,
Anytime.
we're honored to be
Anytime.
here
Anytime.
and really appreciate it.
whenever there's a case going on that you can talk about, we're going to have you on to talk about it. So
Please do. That sounds
Absolutely.
great.
And I want to thank Murder Sheet for introducing you, bringing you over the table. That was great.
Yes,
again,
absolutely.
Kevin and Anya are they're fantastic. It was them, and then of course you guys that really inspired us to dive into this whole podcasting realm because of the work that you guys are doing in this side of things, and we appreciate that, and definitely appreciate the work that you guys do, as the prosecutors as well.
Thank you guys so much. This is I can just see it. Hold my beer. Law and Order. Here we come.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about the name, maybe we should just get a couple more up on the board just in case that one doesn't work out.
Okay, well, I've got one because, you guys were talking about child exploitation. So we could call it Special Victims Unit. What do you think?
Oh,
SVU,
yeah,
for
just
sure.
stay right with that theme.
Can we combine both of them?
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Law
it.
and Order.
That's the
Yeah.
perfect idea. Law and Order.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can handle this. The three of y'all by myself.
I can see where a lot of ideas can flow.
Yeah.
right here.
It's gonna be amazing.
The connection. Yeah.
Alice, it's all right. You'll get there. It'll be
I'll
okay.
get there. I'll get there. Well, like Brett said, it's a joy talking to you guys. We will come on your show anytime. I hope you come back on our show, and I hope we find a case we can do together. And thank you again for your podcast and for your public service. You guys, you have got to check out the Detectives Podcast. You can get in on the ground floor here. They have something really special going on, and I suspect that they will be all the rage in many more years to come. So get in now, listen to the Detectives Podcast wherever you get podcasts. But until next time, I'm Alice,
And I'm Brett.
and this is the Prosecutor's Legal Briefs. We always go long.
So are we. So
Okay.
Always.
Fantastic. I can't wait to hear all the stories you have. Well, hello, everyone. I'll go ahead and sign us on so we can start this conversation because people are going to love you guys. Oh, no, I need to come up with I had a name for you earlier, Brett, and now I've forgotten. Thanks, guys.
That was
Thanks,
awesome.
guys.
Thank you,
That
guys.
was
That was a lot of
awesome.
It was. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, we could talk for hours.
Oh, and we
Don't
can,
worry.
and we should.
We're gonna-
I was going to say, just let me grab a drink and then we.
Then we slur for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This October, Fear is free on Pluto TV with horror movie collections from Paranormal Activity, The Ring,
You will die in 7 days.
Scream, and From Dusk Till Dawn.
This is my kind of place.
And don't miss the man-made nightmares in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or the world-ending chaos in 28 Days Later.
There's something in the blood.
All the scares, all for free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.